Hey guys, it's Mike. I'm making making sort of a supplemental tutorial for you guys today. Um, that way you have something to go on if you get lost during class and I'm not able to help or something. So just something that you can review uh, while you're working alongside me. This one is going to be about UV mapping. Now, you probably don't know what UV mapping is, but if you've ever looked at any like 3D stuff, then you've probably seen images kind of like this that look like weird and they're all like stretched out and stuff. And this is essentially it's this character, but we take every single polygon and every single face and then we cut it up. Kind of like it's a bit gruesome, but like when you skin an animal and then spread it out, you know, like if you've ever seen a bearskin rug, it's sort of the same process. Like we go in, we cut seams along this so we can spread it out into a 2D image plane, and then we paint over that to get so we can end up with some actual color on our models. Because so far we've had just these boring gray meshes, and we ain't about that. We got to spice it up a little bit, guys. So yeah, you can see if I go back to this tracer one, like you'll see this face, which ends up looking like this. Will look like this on our 2D UV map. And this is all done by making these cuts along these sorts of edge loops and stuff and then spreading it out. So I'm going to go back to the mug because I know everyone has this mug completed now in class. So let me do a favor for me, guys. If you'll notice that I have some like my edges on the model are both like thick and thin, and that's due to some if you go to display and then texture border edges, that's in your display menu under polygons, because yours probably doesn't have that. Yours probably looks like this, right? So all your edges are uniform, but for UV mapping, it's incredibly important to know exactly where your different edges are on your UV map. So go back into display, polygons, and turn on texture border edges. And then we have to open up our UV in the modeling menu. Remember, UV, go to UV editor. So this is the 2D map that's going to have all of our information on it, So I'm just going to expand this so you guys can see it pretty well. And this is currently, because I made this whole thing out of a cube, right? So you can see basically where it unfolded that cube to begin with. And then all of our subdivisions are throughout that. But that's not going to work for us, because if we try to paint over that, we're not going to get detail like exactly where we need it, So we need to lay these UVs out in a more beneficial way for us, one that's more flat. So you can go into UVs and make new UVs with these options right here. You have cylindrical, planar, spherical, and camera based. This is basically how it goes about making your UVs, and this is like a preliminary one. So if I go into planar, you'll see that and you have to go into the options. If you just do it straight off the bat, you might get some wacky settings going on. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to reset settings. I'm going to go keep image width and height ratio, and you'll see that I want to project it down from Z. So if I do that and then click project and then click off it, so you can see it just went through the object and just projected straight into the depth of the scene and just laid it out to be a flat object now. And something you can do to preview what your texture map is going to look like, by clicking these UVs, this little checkerboard UV pattern in your UV editor, and you'll see that they get more stretched along the sides because these sides aren't very laid out very well, you know. So if I select in here, double click down to here while holding shift, and then pull these UVs out, watch what happens in my viewport. So you'll see how those become more uniform. So like, we're basically going to go through every single vertex that we've done and just kind of spread them out to be more even so we can have a nice texture map on it. Now you saw a bunch of other options in the UV thing, like cylindrical. You'll see what this looks like. It does this, it makes this kind of arc around your model, and then it tries to auto lay it out like that. And you know, it's getting some interesting results. You can like rotate this around. You can also like notice how where I move my camera. If I go back into object mode and then just go to UV and then go to, I believe it might still be in planar actually. Let me check these. Yeah, if you go click camera from in the project from and then project, you'll see that it's basically the same sort of it just took the camera and made that be the plane that it's projecting from. And you can also go into face mode and project different things, or you can project individual faces like that as well. So if I go back to Z and then project, then click off, you'll see, well, now it's kind of a jumble. So I'm going to go into vertex, or I'm going to go hold right click. You can go back into your component selection settings and then go to UV. And then if I hold, let's see, control and right click, you can go to shell, and then that'll select the whole shell of UVs. So now, notice how these are two separate shells now. If I click on one of these, like some of these, and then go to shell, all the rest of the cup is selected, or the rest of the mug. That's movable. Then if I go into this is its own shell as well, and that's selectable and movable and scalable and rotatable. You can do whatever you want with it, you know. It's basically the same type of movement tools that you were using to model this object to begin with. But I find the most effective way is to go into planar and then only do it from an axis, so you know exactly what you're getting. So I'm going to project that. And then you'll notice that my inside UVs aren't really visible. You can only see like the outside of the cup, and it's because they're overlapping right now. So what we need to do is, you know, when you're skinning something, you have to cut an edge and then unfold from there, you know. So I'm gonna double click this edge loop so that I get that nice edge loop selected. And I'm gonna go to polygons and then cut UV edges. Now notice when I did that, I'm gonna undo it right now. Notice how it was a thin line, and then when I cut it, it becomes thick. That's because I turned on that UV edge display under the polygon settings in display. Where is that? Display, polygons, texture border edges. So that's why it's important, because you need to know when you're setting these edges, right? And so I can now go into UVs, UV. I'm just going to click one of those, and then I'm going to go back into this and control right click to shell, and I'm going to move that out of there. So now, because you can't have any overlapping UVs when you lay this out, right? Because if you paint the outside of your mug to be blue and then the inside orange, and then you have part of your inside laying under your outside, some of that blue is going to leak onto your orange side, right? And we don't want that. But we also need all these faces, like if I go turn this on again, this is all stretched out. So we need all these bottom faces to be as like we need this circular bottom to look as similar to that as it can in this 2D view, right? So I'm gonna go. I could do this a few ways. I'm gonna do it one, the normal way that I would do it, and then two, a little bit of a more efficient way. So I'm gonna go into polygons again, cut UV edges, and then go into UV mode, click one of those, go to shell, and move that. And then a super helpful tool in here is called Unfold, and it has a bunch of settings. Don't use Legacy because it's just broken and is a garbage tool and was in Maya for a long time for no reason. Unfold 3D is where it's at. So if I apply and close, I'm going to reset it, make sure your guys' settings aren't anything different. Oh, pack automatically packs it into your UV map. That means moving all of them to fit within that texture sheet like you see tracer. Like these are packed, all of these, they're packed within that square, right? So I don't want the computer to try to do that itself because we can do it more efficiently just by doing it manually. And in any production pipeline, you're probably going to do that yourself as well. And I haven't found any nice tools that can do it super efficiently. So I did unfold, and you can see it turned into a circle now. So that's very nice. Another way to do that though would have also been to after making that edge cut, if I just went into UV shell on the face. I did that by left clicking a face, then holding control right click, and then going to UV shell. So then it automatically selected everything up to that UV texture border. And then if I went into UV, because remember you can do planar projections, or you can do projections of just individual faces. If I change that to the y-axis, because it's going down, if you look at the y-axis, it's up and down, and then project, you see that we get that same circle right here. And you can move this around right after projecting. And that's perfect. That's perfect. That's exactly what we want. So we're going to keep that. Other problems are that if you look at these UVs, if I go to shell on this, if I turn this checkerboard on, you can see that it's stretching, right? Because these aren't still unfolded. Like if I go into, let's make it easier to see. If I click on one of these and just drag it around, you'll see that we're seeing the other side, right? Because this is the 2D representation of this 3D object, right? So we need to go into these edges and cut it. I'm just shift double clicking that bottom one to make it select all the way down there across that edge loop. I'm going to go ahead and cut UV edges. I'm going to select all the UVs, and then I'm going to unfold it again. And there you go. Perfect. So it unfolded it into this rectangular square type shape. And that's going to be pretty useful for us. You'll notice that it has a little bit of curve to it, right? And that's because this inside is slightly curved as well. Like it's slightly tapered. Like I could exaggerate the taper more. One second, just to show you what I mean. Like if I held B for selection tool, one second. Don't actually do it like this. It just made that like that. So if I did that really quick. But if I select the same faces now, you'll notice that they curve even more. So I'm going to go into UV mode and then unfold that again. You'll see that it's doing that arc. It's because these edges are smaller down here than these edges up here, right? So naturally, when it does its best to try to unfold it, it's gonna get some fanning out, and that's fine for now, because if you go in and try to straighten it, you're like, no, I want this to be just square shaped. Then when you put your actual image on there, yeah, I'll show you that right now actually. If you just go into each of those, oh man, this is gonna be a pain. Oops. You have a lot of like alignment type tools on your toolbar, you'll see, and for the most part you might not need them because Unfold does a really good job, but right here you'll see if I align to the top, it moves them all to the top. If I align to right, you'll see it pushed them all to the right ones. Same with left, same with down. So I'm going to do to the top, then if I do this right here, because like you might be like, I just want this to be square. I'm gonna fight these UVs until they're actually in a square shape themselves, and it's gonna take a little bit of grunt work for me to get there. 1 second. 1 second. I'm just combining these. Fine. If I just keep using these same align tools. You can also use G to do a repeat of any tool. I know I've said that before, but you might have forgotten. But it's a useful hotkey to know. I use it all the time. So I'm just using G, going over all these, kind of aligning them. Fast. Here we go. So I'm going to spread these out now. So this would be if you wanted that what should be a curved like pelt, you know. If you wanted that to actually be hard geometric squares, you know, then you'd probably go through this process. But as soon as I get these kind of evened out, I know the spacing isn't perfect, but I'm trying to make it somewhat even amongst all of these. But yeah, so if I go into my preview, the texture with the checkerboard thing, you'll see that you kind of get some weird, there's like waviness to your texture. You notice how this line kind of goes a little bit out, a little bit in, and that gets more exaggerated as the verts get even further away, or as the faces get even more spread out. So if you have bigger angle on there, like it just gets more and more like that. So you can't always just muscle your UV maps like that. So I find it best, if you want a really clean UV map, is to just leave it with the unfolded option. So I'm gonna now just Control Z all of this. You can see it go back in time. Going back through these. I'm gonna make this, I'm gonna go back until we were, before I made this all exaggerated like that. That should be pretty soon. And there we go. Alright, so now we're back to normal. So we have the inside now unfolded out, right? And if we go into the checkerboard, we can verify. Like, yes. This is very nice. This is very nice. Now be careful where you put these seams. Basically, if I turn this off, because you can see this seam right here, you want to be very like sneaky with it. Like if you were doing an arm, you would make this seam along the bottom of the arm, because the seam might be a little bit visible depending on your workflow, you know. Like so it's best to keep it out of sight when you can, just to like mitigate any of those problems that you're going to run into with like a visible seam. But for this project, it's not super important per se, because like no one, like if you this is just gonna be like a flat color, right? Like I'm just gonna do a flat color over this, and so we shouldn't run into any problems there. But yeah, for when we're doing our characters, our full characters, it's gonna be something to worry about. Also, if your mesh has this yellow to orange or yellow to red gradient, that means you're in soft selection mode, which means you can like pull it like this, you know, and it's kind of has that fall off. So I'm just gonna to swap between that, you can just press B. So I'm gonna turn that off. So now this handle is still attached, right, to the rest of our cup, and I'm just gonna double click both of those edge loops, right? This top one and this top one, this connecting edge loop. I'm just gonna go into polygons, cut UV edges. Where is it? There we go. I'm going to go into UVs. I'm going to control, hold right click, go to shell, move that away just to make them visually separated on here. You can notice I got the thick lines again to show that there's a seam there. And I'm going to try to hide the seam on the outside of the cup, because you'll notice right here we still have that same problem of the UVs are on top of each other right now. So you'll see like this is the regular side, the U1V1. This is like the mirrored side, because you're seeing the actual the other side of the mug is flattened on this 2D space. So we need to unfold that again. And if I did it right here, that would be viable, you know, like it wouldn't. But I can get away with a little bit more right here, because this is like there's already detail on the mug in here with this handle, so we can hide a little bit of that edge loop or a little bit of that texture seam. So now you'll notice that goes up there, and this needs to go down here, and go into polygons, cut UV edges, and then if I go into here and try to unfold it right now, if I go to shell and try to unfold it right here, you'll notice it gets all screwed up, like super messed up. And then we go into this preview and it looks all warped out of shape as well. And it's because it is. It's because we don't have a cut down here to kind of, because this bottom part of the mug is still attached to the rest of the mug, or the rest of the outer mug's UV border, you know. So you know we have to make a cut along the bottom then. So I'm just going to double click that bottom edge loop, polygons, cut UV edges, and then go back into UV. I'm going to select this shell, and then I'm going to unfold that. And you'll notice we get that same type of arc, that subtle arc, you know. That's with the that we saw in the top of the mug. And let's see what that looks like. Yeah, because you want to make sure that these squares maintain as close to regular squares as possible. And it's looking pretty good. It's looking pretty good. So I'm going to go back into I'm going to turn this off so I can see what I'm doing in here again. And if you go down here, this is looking a little bit messed up still, so I'm going to go unfold that as well. There we go. I feel like this is bending a little bit too much though. Let's see what a legacy unfold does. It probably will mess up. Okay, alright. Got some decent results. Nothing too out of whack. What does regular unfold do now though? Yeah, it does. It keeps making that smooth arc, and it doesn't really make sense for this because it's not too spread out. So I think this is a situation in which I would do that aligning that I was doing earlier. But that'd be a lot of verts to do, or a lot of UVs to move around right now. So I'm just gonna continue on with the tutorial. Again, this is the type of thing that we'd unfold right here, because you'll notice if I go into checkerboard to check our UVs, these are not anywhere close to being squares. So I'm going to turn that off, and I'm going to go into edge mode, and I'm going to double click this bottom one, double click this top one, and it's going to select that whole edge loop, and I'm going to cut that right there. Again, I'm doing one of the undersides of the mug because it's or one of the undersides of the edges to make the UV border, because otherwise it's going to be visible. I'm going to unfold that, and then let's go into UVs, and yeah, not too bad, not too bad. We do get a little bit of that warped texture look right here, because you see these edges are kind of splaying outward, and I think you can make that. You can alleviate a little bit of that by cutting these edges, right? So the algorithm has more space to unfold. I'm gonna just hit apply on the options again. That kind of worked, but I don't know. It doesn't. It's trying to unfold it and not have it overlap there as well. So I don't know. It might not work in that case, but in other fringe cases it might. So it's worth it to give it a go. Oh, whoops, went back too far. Gonna unfold it again. All right. So there you go. That is, I believe, if I look back, yep, all of our mug components are unfolded. And now we need to pack this all into this square, right? Because this is what we're going to color up and then apply to the model. So these are the inside UVs, and we're going to need to basically match this square size to be the same across the entire model. Because if you have, like, if I have this UV island be this size down here, then you'll see that, like, if I drew over this texture, right, and then let's get them into the same map. So if I go into the shell, move this over and make this one tiny, you'll notice that there's like, these are almost the same size in the real model. You have the bottom, you have the top, but like if I make this one this much bigger than this other one, even though they're a similar size, this one's gonna have like way too much density in terms of like the texture. Like there's gonna be so many, because this is gonna be a Photoshop document, right? That's like a square Photoshop document that has pixels, right? So this poor bottom part of the mug is gonna have like, I don't know, like 20 pixels devoted to it, while this one's gonna have like 400 times, like 4 times as much. So it'd be like 100 pixels or something, you know, because like that's how much bigger it is in this UV space. So that's why we have to keep these square sizes pretty uniform across each different part. So I'm going to start scaling this up to kind of meet that same size. Let's see. If I go to the bottom and go to top, this one's still a little bit too big. So I'm going to make this bigger. And yeah, it's looking closer. Yeah, perfect. Alright, so then I'm going to move that away from the other one. You'll notice that we're running out of room on our map if I go in here, because everything needs to fit on this one gray square. So I'm going to need to scale these bad boys right down. So I'm going to scale them down. I'm just going to select all UVs, go to their shell. I'm just going to start putting them in right there. I'm going to re-enable checker mark box. So now these squares right here need to be the same size as these squares. So I'm going to go into these UVs, select the shell, and let's see. Yeah, it's the right direction. So I needed to scale these down. That's almost right. See how one starts here and one ends there. So I'm going to need to scale that a little bit. And then kind of move this in to check. Yeah, it's looking pretty good. So I'm going to move that into the square as well. And we need to do the inside of the mug. I'm going to scale this down. Until it meets that size. Okay. So I need to actually match to this edge. Let's see. Let's go here. There we go. Yep. That's looking right. Okay, so I'm gonna move that into the zone. These bottom ones are a bit too big. That one's fine, but these interior ones are a little bit too, these squares are too small compared to these. So we need to scale that up. I mean, scale that down, my bad, because I'm shrinking it over here. Yeah, looks good. And finally, I need to go into this, go to the shell, grab the handle, and let's scale some of these. Try to match the size of that, of these squares. And that looks about right. Okay, awesome. Now we need to lay this down in our UV menu. I'm gonna, now that all of these are like scaled in relationship to each other, I can just kind of no longer press the R key for scale, just go straight into W. Just kind of move these shells around, and you'll see that I can fit everything, because these can't overlap with each other, remember, because otherwise you'll be coloring the wrong parts of your model with the wrong texture. And there we go. There we go. So that's laid out now. So our model has now been UV'd. We can go into checker mode, and everything is uniformly scaled in terms of UV space. And the last step before we go into Photoshop is to, because if you start coloring in Photoshop, you're just kind of guessing, so you need a preview of this, right? So you just go into polygons while you're in object mode, because if you try to do this while you're in UV mode, it's going to complain. You go into polygons, then UV snapshot. You can browse. I'm gonna make this size 2048, just for some detail. You can always, it's always easy to scale down, but it's really hard to scale up, right, guys? So I'm gonna start at like a higher detail. File name. If we just browse, then that's gonna let us. You can see I had some placeholder ones in here. I'm gonna go to my desktop to my course materials folder, and then I'm just gonna do mug UV. Save, and remember this is the UV snapshot. It's in the polygons settings, the very bottom one. And then image format PNG, that works for me, and then OK. Then if I pop open Photoshop, one second, Photoshop's thinking. It's got a lot to think about. It's got a lot on its mind. So if we go into open, and I go to my course materials again, and there should be, yeah, mug UV. If I open that up, you can kind of see it right there, but I always like to add a layer underneath it, make it black, and then fill it, and then you'll see that's the UV right there, right there. You can just kind of start painting on this, you know, because now this is a 2D image. Everyone here is all familiar with that. So I'm going to add this nice little smiley guy, little frowny boy right there. This is just some garbled junk. We got Mike. That's me. All right. So if I turn that off and then file, save as. Let's put this in course materials again. Yeah. And let's make that a PNG. Mug texture. Save. Okay. If you go back into Mug, and if you hold right click, you go into material attributes. You can see, I'm closing my UV stuff down because I don't need it anymore. If you go into your UV attributes, you have what we call a shader. This is, you'll see it's this is a preview of it. It's gray and black. You're like, perfect. That's exactly what we've been working with. But we don't want that shader, so we're going to assign a new material. We're going to go into Lambert because it's, you know, it's a basic one. And you'll see this color channel right here, and you can kind of slide that, and you'll notice how the one in the viewport changes. But we want that to be controlled by our file now. So if you do that and then go into File, you saw that option there. And then you go to Image Name. If I navigate back to Desktop and Course Materials, Mug Texture, you'll see we got that delicious texture right there. And you'll be like, Mike, it didn't work. Nothing's here. It's probably because we're in 5 mode. We need to be in 6 to preview textures, and there you go. Perfect. It's pretty dreadful texture, but that's what the goal of this class is to get, at least, is to get that UV map going. But yeah, hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Hopefully it helps some of you guys, because we got to get through this lesson pretty quickly, and I want to make sure you guys can get it. All right, see you later.